Motherhood taught me that I can't do everything on my own. That was a very painful learning.
Anna Mathur, psychotherapist, bestselling author, speaker, and the host of the Therapy Added podcast.
Some people won't like you. Bad things will happen. You're going to fail. You can't be everything to everyone.
Maybe it's a good thing I'm not a perfect parent because I prepare my child for not perfect world.
It's going to be a pretty harsh reality check if they've had perfect parents, which doesn't exist anyway, and go out into a world that will disappoint them, that will get it wrong, that will ask too much of them. It's such a common feeling, isn't it? That feeling of failure. The number of times that I put my kids to bed and I just felt so full of guilt and full of shame and just promised them silently that I would do better tomorrow. We're not finding it hard because we're failing. We're finding it hard because it is just really demanding. We need people. We need help. We have limited resources. And that's not failing, that's being human. I never see my children feel so happy and safe than when I'm having a great time. When they see me and they see the sparkle in my eye and I'm not frazzled and depleted and snappy and resentful and reactive, they are happy.
Welcome to Do Not Disturb, the inside story. I'm your host, Simona Devta. What grounds you on a tough day?
On a tough day, I would say two things that ground me: getting outside, regardless of the weather, going for a walk. And the other thing is a hot bath. There's something really comforting. It feels like a hug. It's something I've done since forever. So it's something to return to.
One thing motherhood taught you?
Motherhood taught me that I can't do it on my own. I can't do everything on my own. That was a very painful learning, was that I can't be in control of everything and I cannot carry it on my own. I have to let people love me and support me like I find so easy to do to other people. So it was allowing myself to be supported and loved. And that was a really hard thing to learn, but just hugely important.
But once you do it, it's a very liberating thing to know. Thank you. That's it. I feel like we are warmed up. And I wanted to start by asking you to introduce yourself just in a few words to our audience who might not know you.
Okay, I'm Anna Mathur. I'm a psychotherapist. I work clinically. I see clients. But also I am an author. I write books about mental health, a lot about maternal mental health, and I do podcasts. And I basically do anything and everything to share tips and tools and insights to support people, support mums.
Support mums. Yeah, that's how I discovered you. And I was very keen to bring you on here because I think you can share so many invaluable tips and strategies for different mothers. I am a mother of a 10-year-old and I am expecting another one, so a little bit of a gap.
Yeah.
And I thought a topic that you cover a lot across different platforms is the feeling of failing mothers.
Yeah.
And I thought we'll start with that. Why is that there's so many women, mothers in particular today, that just feel like they're failing, at what they do?
Oh gosh, it's such a common feeling, isn't it? That feeling of failure and the number of times that I put my kids to bed. So I have a 10-year-old as well, and I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And the number of times that I put them to bed and I've just felt so full of guilt and full of shame and just promised them silently that I would do better tomorrow. And I think, it's that feeling of failure. It's that feeling of not being good enough, dropping the balls and just trying so hard to do right by people and right by yourself and just not being able to. And I think for a few reasons, like one, I think our society just isn't set up in a way that really helps us thrive as mums. I think the expectation on us to be juggling roles at home and in the workplace and working if you don't have as if you don't have children and parenting as if you don't have work and the cost of living and the challenge of kind of childcare. And I just think our society isn't really set up yet to fully support us mums in all the things that we are juggling. And the other thing that I think makes us feel like we're failing is that we expect so much of ourselves. I definitely would say that I was a people pleaser and a perfectionist in recovery, and I would definitely say that it was a very hard learning when actually I learned that my perfectionism did not translate very well to motherhood at all. To try and do that try and parent perfectly, to try and just keep all the balls in the air, on my own, it wasn't going to happen. I can't do it on my own. And I think also we struggle to validate our own emotions. I think with social media and the digital landscape, we're constantly seeing other people's experiences of parenting, and we're seeing their front of house. And I think we can find things hard, and we tell ourselves that actually we need to try harder then. We need to find better ways. We need to dig deeper, when actually sometimes we just need to validate the fact that we're finding it hard, because it is hard. It's not an easy thing, and we're not finding it hard because we're failing. We're finding it hard because it is just really demanding. And I think we're so fixed on looking at the needs of people around us, and actually often we overlook our own. So that's something else I'm really passionate about, is that, we can feel like we're failing because we're needy too. We need people. We need help. We have limited resources, and that's not failing, that's being human. So I like adding a big dose of humanness. Yeah.
And how did you yourself started to unlearn those behaviors or unlearn those messages you sent to yourself in the night? I'm sure it still happens, like you said. What is the self-talk that happens there when you do feel like you're failing or going to fail, or how do you manage that?
When I'm just beating myself up, and I do this with clients as well, sometimes, it's asking myself, have I actually done anything wrong, or have I just been human? Have I actually failed, or am I just tired? Have I actually failed, or was that actually just a really stressful situation that no one's going to respond to perfectly? And I think it's recognizing and making space for kind of our inevitable messy humanness, that I think often when we are evaluating ourselves or a stressful moment, that's what we're not doing. We're not thinking, that was just really hard. Well done me for navigating that. Of course it's going to be messy.
Yeah, I've been thinking, again, that comes, I think, with older children, but you were the professional, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking, do children need perfect parents? Because, world is not perfect. I always will apologize if I wasn't right. But they will deal with different people in their lives. It's okay. I'm telling myself, maybe it's a good thing I'm not a perfect parent, because I prepare my child for not perfect world. I strive to be one, but it's it helped me to feel better about myself. Is it true, or children do need the perfect mom? I don't know.
It's so true. It's absolutely true. Because actually what we do in our parenting is we give our children this microcosmic, this little mini example of how to interact with people, what to expect from people, how to take responsibility, how to navigate disappointment, how to feel let down and know that actually you're still safe, how to grapple with your confidence and know that actually you're still acceptable. And I think this is what we do in parenting, is we give them a sort of example of a very messy world. And the most important thing is that we take responsibility, as you were saying. We apologize, we recognize when maybe that wasn't the best way to respond, and we recognize that actually we're tired and grumpy, and that's why we responded like that. And we can take responsibility with our children. We can say, you know what, that wasn't your fault. Yes, that was quite annoying what you did, but I wish I hadn't shouted at you. That isn't how I wanted to respond, and I'm tired, so I'm gonna go and have a rest, or I'm feeling grumpy and stressed, so I'm actually I'm gonna take it slightly easier with work, or whatever it might be. I think it's recognizing that you need to take responsibility, and that is an amazing thing to teach. But also to voice your needs and how you're going to meet them. I'm feeling really grumpy. I'm going to go out and have a walk. It's not your fault. This is what I'm doing for myself, and acknowledging a need. And knowing that actually you can hold boundaries, and your kids will be disappointed, right? They might be cross at you. They might push the boundaries. But ultimately, it doesn't mean that boundary shouldn't be there. And I loved, Zoe Blaskey. She's amazing, right? She talks a lot about motherhood, and she's
also part of this season.
Yeah, so. She's so great. And she shared this little metaphor, and I've held on to it so long. And she says, if you go on a roller coaster, and when you shake, the little thing comes down over your head, the safety bar, and you shake it. You grab your hands and you shake it, and you're not shaking it in the hopes it'll move. You're shaking it in the hopes that it won't move. You don't want it to move, but you want to shake it just to make sure. And I think often, we set a boundary or we say no or we set a parameter and our children shake it and they're cross with us. And actually we can feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't set it like this. But actually what they're doing is looking for safety. What they're doing is looking for consistency. And I think that's it, is our kids will be disappointed. And actually that helps them navigate disappointment in life, how we deal with that, how they just teaching them that they can withstand disappointment. They can be really cross with us and we're still there, and they can cope with disappointment because we're not trying to save them from it, and it's safe to feel. We don't need to numb it or manipulate it or suppress it. It's just giving them confidence to ride those waves of feeling they're going to experience all throughout life.
Exactly. It is a roller coaster of feelings, life, for sure. You talk a lot about the nervous system and feelings and dealing with those. For people that are new to the idea of how to deal with their nervous system and calm down and regulate it, could you tell them what it means in practice?
Yeah, very, very simply, it's your sense of safety. Do I feel safe in myself? Can I navigate uncertainty, open this email, deal with a tantrum, and still feel safe in my body when confronted with stress? And also, when everything is chilled and I'm on the sofa in the evening and I have an opportunity to rest, do I feel safe in that rest? Do I feel like I can lean into it and enjoy it and embrace it? And if not, if you're getting into bed and you're feeling like, oh gosh, you're ruminating over the day and you can feel your heart racing. If you're lying on the sofa and you're feeling really fidgety, like there is a million things I should be doing right now, this is a waste of time, I need to get up. If you are feeling very easily triggered and tipped into that shouty state that actually doesn't align with your values, or actually someone emails you and suddenly you feel like you're being chased by a bear and you just need to do everything you can to kind of feel understood and safe again. So our nervous system, is basically our sense of safety. And we have these two branches. So we've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is, the, oh my gosh, something is, the alarm state, the adrenaline, the cortisol, there's really activating hormones that are literally getting you ready to fight or flee for your life. And we need this. We really need this. We'd be lost without it. We would actually be unsafe without it. But if you imagine a zebra at a watering hole in the desert, it's at this beautiful watering hole and it hears this lion in the distance, right? And it's suddenly the sympathetic nervous system kicks in and you can see that it's poised and it's tense and it is ready to run for its life. And its ears are pricked up, its pupils are dilated, it's not drinking water anymore, it's on alert. And then the lion goes off into the distance and the roar it's gone. And you can visibly see that zebra just completely relaxing. It's safe again, it's drinking again, that cortisol is subsiding, and you can see that it feels safe again. And I think what happens is that, we can live in this vigilant state so much so that actually we just can't feel safe. We can't laugh, we can't lean into fun, we can't feel present. We just always feel like we're in like this waiting room for something bad to happen. So what we can do, and this is what a lot of what I do in therapy, is just helping people find ways to feel safer. Because then we're more resourced, right? If some stress comes along, actually we're more able to think, oh, how do I want to deal with this? Rather than just being tipped into that physiological stress state. Could you share
3 to 5 strategies on how people can deal with that? Because especially moms or working moms or people in the beginning of their career, I find they will be in that state permanently. And to get out of that state can be also triggering and anxious. So what kind of techniques can we use to calm down our nervous system?
So I think it's really helpful to bypass the cognitive, because actually when you're in that state, you're too far gone to think, wait a minute, what is that amazing tip that I was told? Or way to reframe this? And actually, that part of our brain, the really cognitive part, is just logged off and we are just all feelings at that point. So some really helpful things that, those breathing exercises. If you've used any in labour, if basically the extended exhale is so important because it basically says to your body, you're safe. You're safe. It's okay. So just some deep breaths, deep breath all the way in. You don't have to think too much about the counting, but if you want to, in for 4 and out for 7, all the way out, that exhale basically activates the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, which is to safe and digest the kind of more calming, restful state. So that is a powerful way just to tell your body that you are safe. Another thing outside of those moments is to really start working on your internal dialogue. Because if you are someone who is essentially criticizing, jumping on every thought, telling yourself you're being ridiculous, telling yourself you should be trying harder, maybe even bullying yourself on the inside, responding to stressful situations by criticizing yourself, then of course we're going to feel braced, right? If our kids are expecting to be told off, they're already scared before we've even found out they've broken the cup. They're literally poised and ready to get told off. And I think sometimes we are scared of ourselves. We're scared of being told off by ourselves. So starting to just bring in a more nurturing dialogue. Think about, how would I want to respond to my child if they were feeling stressed? How would I want to respond to them if they were feeling vulnerable? It wouldn't be, oh, for goodness sake, you should be all right with this by now. Just look on the bright side. It would be, I'm here. I'm with you. I see you. You're not alone. So and it can feel a bit silly to start with.
I'm really struggling with this sometimes.
Yeah, it's
sometimes
really hard.
I'm there, but sometimes I'm really struggling.
Yeah, but it's this takes a long time, because if that internal dialogue has tended to sound quite critical for a lot of your life, it's going to take time to start building up power in that other voice, right? But in time, you start noticing that it's easier to access. In time, you start noticing that actually, oh gosh, I was so much kinder to myself that time. I didn't just berate myself. And you just start seeing slow little shifts. And it comes out of you as well. When I'm very clumsy, I drop stuff, break stuff. I actually really like it when someone else breaks stuff for a change, because I'm like, oh, that's nice. It wasn't me that time. And I've just started saying out loud things like, oh dear, it doesn't matter. Oh wow, that's all right. These things happen, because my kids hear that. And that's the internal dialogue that I want to nurture for them, because as kids, we basically internalize, like, the way that our parents respond to us. It really has a very powerful way of informing that internal dialogue. So look out for that.
Everything.
Yeah, look out for that. That's so important. And it takes a while, but it does shift. And other things that I would say, think about what is fun for you. What is fun for you? What do you like doing that makes you feel like you? What do you like doing that fills and fuels you? And try and engage in a little bit more, because on a chemical level, the oxytocin, some of the hormones that are produced when we are doing things that make us feel connected to other people and ourselves, and make us feel joyful, beyond lowering blood pressure and heart rate and all of that, it actually produces oxytocin, which is the direct antidote to cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So these things just often get edged out, don't they, in parenting? I haven't got time for that anymore. But actually, these are very powerful things to do. Do the things that make you feel more you.
And they change with time. It doesn't mean that you have to be going clubbing, right, on Friday night. That's
definitely
everything
not
worse
these days. Yeah,
I need right. Exactly. Oh. But I'm like, maybe it's just like that path that we talked about, or to me at the moment, doing my podcast does that. It just it's just meeting phenomenal women, and I just feel so great. I literally feel, like you said, my body rewires. I produce happiness hormones. These conversations give a lot to me, but that means saying no to some things and being like, I'm doing this, it's me time now.
Yeah, and so important to ring fence that. And I think a lot of the mums that I work with can find that they feel really guilty and maybe even selfish doing, and I've been there, doing these things that are for you, doing these things.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I never see my children feel so happy and safe than when I'm having a great time. When they see me and they see the sparkle in my eye, and I'm not frazzled and depleted and snappy and resentful and reactive, they are happy. They feel safe. And I think it's such a lesson to me, is that I can only parent in half the way that I want to when I've got something in the tank, because it takes a lot to be calm when you're faced with stress. It takes a lot to be calm. And I think, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, is that sometimes, the ways that our culture isn't really set up necessarily to support us. But I feel like a lot of generations have really applauded women for being burnt out and depleted, that actually the more you give of yourself, that shows how much you love. So therefore, the more burnt out you are, probably the better a mum you are, because you've just given and given and given and given until you've got nothing left. And it's very useful for society when women give and give and give and give. But actually, when we're depleted and we're frazzled, we can't rationalise anxious thoughts because we can't engage that part of our brain to coach ourselves through it. We can't even laugh, right? Because when we're so done in and exhausted, I don't have a sense of humour. I can't laugh with my kids. I'm just like, I just want to get them to bed. So actually, when we are finding ways to resource ourselves, we're actually able to love
much more
in the way that we want to. And yeah, we have that sparkle in our eye that the people who love us really love to see. Don't they?
And that kind of brings me back to the beginning of what you said. When we did our quickfire, you said something I learned, I cannot do it all as a parent. Like the hardest thing the hardest thing motherhood taught me was doing it all. And I think that's something that comes up in your work as well. Like we've just, as women, put so much on ourselves, like the expectations of the society, as you said, historically. And we've now recorded the first season aired of Do Not Disturb. Every single woman that came on the podcast, they said it's just impossible. What we've kind of put on ourselves, it's an illusion. It's never gonna happen. Like even if you think you're doing, you will be failing either your health, your mental health, your physical health. I don't know, your parenthood, your work. Like there are just so many balls to juggle. It's impossible to do it all. But the question is then how to structure this new life for women, right? How do we choose what to do and what not to do and on what terms? Like, I almost feel like it's our job as generation to restructure the rules for women going forward, because we're good at work. I mean, we're succeeding at work. It's not a competition against men, but many women are outperforming men in their jobs, having children. But there are so many sacrifices. I hope we'll find a way to do it all without those sacrifices. And
it's a big one, isn't it? And I think it's knowing what those sacrifices look like for you, because I think part of the challenge is that we see other people succeeding, right? We see their front of house, we see them winning at work, we see them parenting beautifully, and it kind of feeds into this idea that it's somehow possible without a hidden cost. But as a therapist, I will tell you, I see the hidden cost. I see the burnout. I see the anxiety. I see the resentment. I see the broken down relationships. I see the challenge of identity. I see, the imposter syndrome. I see the cost. I see the behind the scenes. And if someone is thriving in one area of their life, as you were saying, like we can't thrive in all areas of life. And some of the times that I have maybe looked like I'm thriving the most in my work, actually my personal life, my relationships, my parenting, my mental health, have actually just suffered the most. So it is an illusion that if someone is thriving in one area of their life, they're thriving in all the others. So it's knowing what that cost is for you. It's thinking, what is actually sustainable? Where are my values? Where am I not living by my values? I might be doing great at work, but actually I'm snappy with my kids, and that is really not aligning with my values. So they say we can't have it all, but I think sometimes we need to reevaluate what it all is. I cannot be friends and keep up with everyone. I cannot and be a good parent. I cannot keep up with all the school emails and keep up with all my work emails. So it's about thinking, if I change my expectations of what I actually have capacity for, and I change the bar to something I can actually meet, and I find my joy there, right? Because I'm not getting all my worth out of being able to juggle all the balls and keep them in the air, then maybe I can actually have it all, because it just looks very different for me. you know?
Yeah.
I've set the bar in a very different place.
There's some non-negotiables, like the concerts, for example, but I will miss the coffees with moms, and I'm okay with that. Like,
that's it.
Yeah, like, it's okay. Maybe I'll make one if I really want to, but I don't put that pressure on myself to be there always. Yeah, because I can't.
I think that's it. It's knowing that you have limited resource, and that isn't a failure. That's just the parameters of being human.
You talk about this kind of boundaries, I guess that comes down to boundaries in your book, Know Your Worth, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the book and how we can instill that feeling of self-worth? Actually, a few women that came to this podcast talked a lot how finding that self-worth actually was the beginning of their journey to either manifesting career path or different things, but it all starts there, right? I'm worthy of having a good family. I'm worthy of good relationships, good job. You tell us.
So the boundaries that you place are basically saying this is what it takes for me to feel respected and valued as a human. And it's not me first. It's not me more important. It's me as well. It's actually, I deserve to be respected in the way that I respect others. And boundaries basically dictate what that looks like. So it might be that I go to the concerts, but I don't pressure myself to go to the coffee. So if someone's then having, come on, please come for a coffee, you never come for a coffee. It's actually, what's aligned with my values right now? I know that actually if I say yes to everything, I'm going to feel frazzled and burnt out. And it's known that sometimes these boundaries are flexible. So sometimes you might think, you know what, actually, I haven't been for a while and I've got a quiet day tomorrow. So, okay, I'm going to go. Or it might be holding that boundary and saying, thank you, but I just don't have capacity for that. I've got so much going on. I'll maybe come to the next one. So it's holding that and actually not putting other people's wishes above your well-being. You know, yes, relationships.
That doesn't make you unkind.
It doesn't make you unkind. Yeah. It just makes you
I think a lot
healthy.
Of women struggle with that. At least something, you know, I surveyed a few before having you here on, and they say, I just don't want to be rude, or I don't want to look like I'm a bad mom. Like, this came up a lot. Like, if I don't go to some school event, does that make me a bad mom? And I'm like, well, you decide that kind of thing, right?
That's it. We challenge those narratives. And sometimes it's thinking, you know what, I'm going to hold that boundary. And there will be people that don't understand that. There will be people that don't know why you're not going to everything. And it's also being okay with being misunderstood. And it's being okay with letting other people have their opinions about the choices that you make, and you being so confident in actually, this is right for me and my family, and this is right for me and my resources. Actually, the more confident we are in the choices that we make, the less swayed we are by the opinions of others. And relationships are sacrificial, right? Sometimes we go out on a limb for people that we love. Sometimes we support someone even though we're carrying lots because we love them and we care about them. And it's not about just saying no to everything. It's actually just about, just evaluating each decision and thinking, well, what's right? What's the most authentic thing that enables me to turn up authentically to that? And knowing that, someone might wish you were at coffee, someone might wish you took on that work thing, but ultimately the cost for you and your well-being and your mental health or your capacity or your ability to do your podcast, which is what puts a sparkle in your eye, you know, maybe that is the cost, and that cost is too high in that instance. So you hold that boundary and you cope with the fact that sometimes people will be disappointed, and they can cope.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. Is there an exercise we can do to find those values? Like, you know, as we say, there are many balls to juggle, and like sometimes in the noise you can't even see what is it that you value. Sometimes is that something that you do with your clients, or is that something we can find in the books, or maybe a resource you can share to actually unfold those values, to understand what your priorities are?
So two things I think are super helpful, and I've put these tips in a few of the books over the years. Number one is think about what you're not saying. You know, sometimes someone invites us to something, or we see a message that actually feels quite frustrating or upsetting, and we know that we feel upset. We know that we feel frustrated. Maybe we know that there's a need that we haven't expressed, or we want something, we need someone to support us in a certain way, but we don't do it. We don't say it because we're fearful. We're fearful of being too much. We're fearful of that person not being able to give us what we need, or we're fearful of being misunderstood. But start noticing what you're not expressing and saying, and just, start noticing that little voice of need, that voice that is more vulnerable, that voice that needs support, that voice that needs that you might need someone else to help you meet sometimes. And just start asking yourself, what would it be like if I said that? What would it be like if I expressed that? What would it be like if I said, actually, when you said that, I felt a bit hurt, really. Can we talk about it? And in time, what happens is that you start seeing these decisions, and in safe spaces and with safe people, or on days when you're feeling brave, you start speaking some of these things out. You start asking for some needs to be met. And what you start doing is rewriting the narrative that people can't handle you, or that you're too much, or they won't be able to be there for you. And not everyone can be there for you. Not everyone can meet those needs. But you start finding that actually people can handle you more than you thought. People can be there for you more than you thought. And it's so empowering. So that's the first tip, is start noticing what you're not saying and expressing, and noticing those little opportunities and invitations to start speaking them out. And that's how we build confidence. And then the other thing is, start asking yourself, when faced with decisions or stressful situations, what would I do if no one knew? What would I choose if nobody knew?
That's nice.
Would I, and this comes up a lot in therapy. Say I'm working with a mum who wants a planned C-section because she had a difficult first birth, and she just really wants to have that, knowingness about how it's going to go. And she's just so worried. She was worried about what her friends might think, worried about having these conversations and asserting herself maybe with the medical profession. And it was like, what would you do then if no one knew? She was like, well, look, that's just what I would do. I would just have the planned C-section. And what it does, it so powerfully strips away the fear. It strips away the layer of people pleasing that might be dictating it. And it helps us get to the core of the decisions and the behaviours that are actually more aligned with our values. So that's such a powerful question to ask yourself. So there's a couple of tips.
I love this tip. I am taking a few difficult decisions, and I was thinking, like, what will my grandparents think the other day? And then I was like, just think, like, what would you think? Like, how did we get so far to think, like, that you live this life? I had like this difficult self-talk with myself, but it kind of got away. Like, what will my classmates think? Like, who cares? Like, essentially, I will live with the consequences of these decisions, right? So as much as I love and appreciate opinions of my close circle, I get to live the consequences of my decisions. So yeah, but I love that you framed it like, instead of saying it like, what will my friend think? Just like, what if nobody knew? Like, that's such a liberating way of thinking.
Right. And I think another thing is often just to ask yourself, what do you want? Because I think we get so used to outsourcing our decisions and Googling what's the right thing to do and asking for loads of opinions that actually we forget to ask our gut sense. What is that gut sense? What do I need? What feels right? So I think sometimes asking yourself first, rather than asking everyone around you or asking the internet, or just to go there first, can be really helpful.
Yeah, I just started doing that as well. I was very keen on feedback always, but right now I'm like, let's just do it and see how it goes first. And then actually, usually people are quite generous with their opinions anyway, like
True.
When you don't even ask them. But amazing. Thanks for joining us today. If you're enjoying this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe. It helps us reach more listeners and keeps the conversation going. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your new book, what it's all about, and how we show up in the uncomfortable situations?
Yeah.
What led you to write it? I have so many questions.
So this one is called The Uncomfortable Truth, and this was out last August. And it's all about the fact that sometimes, we live so much of our lives out of fear. Right? We live our lives out of fear of something going wrong, so we try and control everything. We're super hyper vigilant. We live our lives out of fear what other people think, so we try and put all our decisions through that filter of what's the best one to make that everyone will be pleased with me. And You know, it's just about these 10 uncomfortable truths of life that some people won't like you. Bad things will happen. You're going to fail. You can't be everything to everyone, essentially. You can't always be present. And it's actually that if we just come to terms with the fact that life is inevitably a bit messy, we are going to make bad decisions. We are going to do things that people don't agree with. We will be misunderstood. We won't just try and brace ourselves against that all the time. We just assume that, you know what, I can just be myself, and some people won't like it. But actually, even if I was myself, or even if I changed myself to be right for loads of other people, there would be other people that didn't like that either. So why don't I just come to terms a little bit more and be more accepting of the truth that I can't possibly be liked by everyone, and then it gives me permission to live a bit more authentically. That sits differently. So, you know, I think this translates so much to parenting.
What encouraged you to write it?
What encouraged me to write it? I think recognizing that for so much of my life, I lived in fear of what people thought. You know, I want to do things right, failing, you know, trying to get everything right, do everything perfectly so they didn't go wrong and I didn't fail because I believed that to fail meant that I was a failure. You know, actually, to fail just means that something didn't go so well, maybe it wasn't the right decision. It's not feedback on who we are and how acceptable we are. And I think, you know, another thing that really fueled my fear and shaped my life was that something bad would happen. You know, this anxiety, this hypervigilance of playing over and over again in the worst case scenarios in the hopes that I might find some way to avoid them. And actually, bad things happen regardless of how much of a control freak I am. I fail regardless of how hard I try, and some people don't like me regardless of how much of a good person I try and be. And I think it was this moment of actually, what if I, instead of just trying to be a better person or trying harder or trying to mitigate bad things happening, what if I just accept that those things are just true about life? And it was so liberating. It was really liberating. So I think that's what I really want to empower people in, is instead of just bracing yourself against these inevitable truths, why not find a way for them to sit differently in your life?
There are a lot of women that obviously face the same things that you just described, but they feel like the picture has to be perfect. You know, like they don't want to accept that something goes wrong, and they really need to show up like everything is going well, even maybe a little bit lying to themselves in the first place, not others, you know. I was certainly one of those women when I was divorcing the father of my older child. It was for a very long time. I didn't want to admit to myself like there was something wrong. And I feel like it's such a female trait in general. How do we start to notice those uncomfortable truths?
To be a bit more authentic, I guess, isn't it? It's a question of like, how do we start allowing ourselves to be a bit more vulnerable and to let down the guard a bit? Because I think if we're honest, it's absolutely exhausting trying to hold up that facade of everything is good, everything is perfect, I'm all good here, nothing to worry about. And I think sometimes it's recognizing what purpose that actually serves for you. And it might be that sometimes things are so hard and challenging underneath it all that to even admit that things aren't okay might feel like opening the floodgates. You know, if I fall apart, how the heck am I going to put myself back together again?
Yeah.
You know, it might be that actually I don't want people to think that I'm struggling, because I don't actually know. If someone really asks me if I'm okay enough times, what if I'm honest? Will they be able to handle it? What will they be able to do? Will they actually be able to help me? And it can feel so risky and scary and vulnerable. And I think what I will always say is that, you know, you need 2 or 3 people who know how you really are. You need 2 or 3 people that you don't have to pretend with. And that can feel like a journey in itself, even working out, looking amongst your friends and be like, who are those people? Maybe I've got one. And it's taking those little opportunities. And I always say, you know, think about those people who have historically been kind and supportive, and just challenge yourself. What would it be like to tell them a little bit more? You know, next time they say, how's your week going? Instead of just saying, oh yeah, all good, how are you getting on? It's like, oh, actually, you know, I had a really tricky morning on Monday. Oh, I just felt like everything was going wrong. How are you? You know, just that giving a little bit more and learning who those people are in your life that can be there for you and that can, you know, can just carry a little bit of that and be with you in that and acknowledge you and see you in that. And I think that, you know, that is so important, and we want to start letting that mask down a little bit, because it's so exhausting to hold that up, and it does have a cost. You know, we can feel quite lonely. We can feel quite lonely behind that mask, right? Because we know that this is hard and heavy, and we're stuck in a rut of everyone thinking that we're doing great, and the gap between what they think and what is real is just, it feels massive. So it's like, how can I just gently start building up the confidence to let people close, and knowing that sometimes people will say the wrong stuff. I remember when I had postnatal depression, I remember admitting it to a good friend of mine that had been my friend for a long time, and she was like, but Anna, what have you got to be depressed about? You've got a baby, you've got a supportive husband, you live in a beautiful area. And I was like, she was like, people would kill for this. And I just felt so invalidated. And I thought, okay, I thought you were going to be kind to me, and actually you didn't get what I was saying, and that is not what I needed to hear. And I think in those moments, it's so easy to go, right, that's it, I'm never saying that again to anyone. Like, no one's going to understand me, and you feel more alone. But actually the right people will be able to see and be there for you. And if someone can't, it doesn't mean that what you shared is invalid. It just means that they're not in a place to see you in that at this moment, and to try again, to try with someone else, to keep going.
And there will always, at any point in our life, be people who do better than you, and there will be people that do worse than you. So I feel like I often, so my partner is Brazilian, and there is a lot of poverty in Brazil. So whenever I feel sad, I'm like, oh my God, just, you know, think of those children on the street, and like all the things we have, just the safe roads, you know, like just this is enough. But then I'm like, no, you cannot go down that rabbit hole, because then you will not like face your feelings ever. You will just,
okay, then, is it? No feeling is ever valid. I think it's the and, isn't it? That both those things can be true. You can feel overwhelmed, you can feel alone, you can feel frustrated, you can feel needy, and you can also acknowledge that there are other people in dire situations, and both of those things can be true. You know, the one doesn't need to invalidate the other.
Yeah. Because otherwise, none of your feelings matter, kind of thing.
We don't do it with happiness, do we? We're not like, oh, I shouldn't feel happy at the birth of my baby because so-and-so has got 5. You know, so-and-so. You know, we don't think, oh, I shouldn't be happy today because I've had a nice coffee with a friend because so-and-so is getting married at the weekend. They're the one that deserves to be happy. We don't do it with good emotions. We don't invalidate good emotions, do we? We just go to the bad ones. And I think the less we do that, and the more we allow ourselves just to feel sad or just to feel frustrated, and just let ourselves go through the motion of that emotion. And it is, emotions are emotion. They move through us, and it has benefit. We release it, and then it shifts, and it doesn't feel so intense anymore. We push it down, and we suppress it, and we invalidate it, and we try and manipulate it, and it goes inside of us, and it stays there, and it becomes a bit tangled, comes out sideways.
Let it pass through. Let it be. Something close to let it be that you talk a lot about is being good enough, and I love this concept of yours. Can we talk briefly about being good enough, kind of becoming the goal, and letting go of the perfectionism that you also touched on throughout this talk?
Yeah, so in my last book, The Uncomfortable Truth, one of the uncomfortable truths sounds a little bit confusing, but it's like, you are not good enough. And I think it was a real turning point for me, and often is for my clients, when you recognize where that bar is set. You know, if your bar is set really high, or if it is by the world standard of you should be high functioning and getting everything done and juggling all the balls and doing everything brilliantly, then you are not good enough. You're never going to be able to keep up with that. You are never going to have the resources. You are never going to have the stamina or the resilience to just do all of that stuff. You are setting yourself up for shame and failure and self-criticism. So for me, realizing that I was not good enough, I didn't have all the resources to keep up with those expectations, was such a liberating point. You know, I'm limited, I'm messy, I'm needy, I'm weak at points, and that isn't an insult. That's just part of this is a state of being human. That's just inevitable. Exactly. So I think, you know, recognizing that I was never going to be good enough to reach those standards, it starts challenging you to think, okay, what are those standards? And what are they today? And what are they this hour? Because you might have had a rubbish night's sleep last night. You might have had an argument with your partner. You might be run down. You might physiologically be dealing with something you can't even see. So where is the bar today for you? What is attainable? What is respectful and honouring to where you are at? And to be good enough is to kind of shun perfectionism, because it's just, it's a fast track to burnout. And just thinking, all the psychologists, there are so many studies that saying, parent psychologists that have studied parents and said, you know what, be good enough is good enough. We have to get it right all the time. Some studies say 60% of the time to get it right. Some even say 40% time of getting it right. And it's just actually, as you said earlier, perfect parents don't prepare children to navigate a very imperfect world. It's going to be a pretty harsh reality check if they've had perfect parents, which doesn't exist anyway, and go out into a world that will disappoint them, that will get it wrong, that will ask too much of them, that will not give them what they need with it. It's just, it's good enough, and thinking, what does good enough look like today? And sometimes you might have capacity to reach for more and give more, but where's that base level? What are you expecting of yourself? How realistic is that? How honouring of your humanness and your limits is that?
Would you recommend people sit down and write that down once in a while?
It changes. I think it changes also, like all the time it changes. And sometimes, my kids might come home, they're absolutely frazzled, and I might have this rule that we eat dinner at the dinner table, right? And most of the time that's what we do. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what they really need right now? They just need to cozy up and like get in their onesies and have a nice bowl of warm food in front of the TV. And I think, when I'm holding the same standard all the time, that would look like failure one day, and actually that looks like leaning into what the needs are of that day. And so, I think it's thinking, what's good enough now? What's good enough now? Was how I responded good enough? How can I repair? How can I reconnect if not? 'Cause sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes my decisions, my parenting is not good enough. Actually, maybe it's a bit unhelpful or destructive in that moment, the decision that I just made. So it's like, how can I repair that? How can I give myself some compassion? And how can I equip myself to maybe make a slightly different decision next time? And how can I tend to myself so that I'm able to do that? So it's just,
we're learning as well.
Human state. Yeah, it's always changing. We're always learning. It's always different, isn't it?
Amazing. I think this conversation was really full of tips, actionable insights, and I will be reading your new book for sure. I love your books. I think they are very helpful to all of us, not just women and men, inclusive. But I have a few closing questions, if that's okay.
I love your questions.
One thing you hope your children learn from watching you?
To be kind to themselves and to rest. I like resting loudly. I like saying, you know what, I'm just going to have a rest. I want them to see me rest. I want them to see me do things that are restful for me and giving to me, because I always want them to know that didn't stop in childhood. We need that forever.
Amazing. I need to do that. You said that and I was like, oh my God.
Do it loudly.
I'm like, dishes
rest.
And like doing thousands of things at the same time. Yeah, I definitely need to also vocalize it. Like, I think I tend to vocalize like, what a good girl I've been today. I've done all the dishes and I cooked and the groceries and the work. I never like vocalize to my child like, oh, mommy took a long nap today and now mommy's feeling great. Yes. I don't do that. Yes.
Need meeting. Yes, and to your partner as well. I used to jump up if my husband walked into the room, if I was sitting on the sofa, as if I was somehow doing something like really naughty. And now, that's just challenging that internal narrative that there was something indulgent about rest. And now I'm like, no, I am chilling. I am putting my feet up, get the chocolate out. I'm not doing anything else for the rest of the day of any purpose beyond just resourcing myself and enjoying this time. So rest
and of course
loudly.
They know you do other things, like probably if you just rested all day, that would not be the best message for the children. But given who we
given
are,
who I am, given who we are, I think yes, that's it's more of a challenge to rest sometimes than not rest.
Exactly. Well, fantastic. I loved meeting you and having this conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely loved it too. What a privilege to chat with you. Thank you.
If you found today's episode with Anna helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can follow Anna at Anna Mathur and find her books, including her latest, The Uncomfortable Truth, wherever you buy your books. See you next time on Do Not Disturb. Thank you.